18 months ago, Margaret McBride came up with the concept for her exhibition titled Site Plans. It's the first major work Margaret has drawn upon her own life experience.
We build what we think are secure structures, and then through perhaps our own doing or elements we can't control, these structures actually fall down.
Made of dowling and sar paper, this structure represents daydreams. The middle column, made of wax and wood, spirituality, and the clay and metal structures, the physical supports people create and rely upon, but none are permanent. The paper could blow away, the wax melt, the wood burn, the clay dissolve and the iron rust. There are also two-dimensional pieces documenting the same theme.
I don't want a literal interpretation of the work. I mean, that's why it tends to be abstracted, because I want people to actually relate their own ideas, their own feelings to it.
A senior teacher at Newcastle Grammar, Margaret is a prolific artist with overseas exhibitions to her credit. Site Plans opens tonight at the Newcastle Region Gallery. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
They came from everywhere to have a flutter on what is supposed to be one of the unluckiest days of the year. It wasn't a matter of which colour, black was all the rage, as people tried to make the day a winner. The ghost and goblins may not have been lurking in Newcastle's main shopping mall, but Black Friday still cast a dark shadow over shoppers. A strategically placed ladder proves superstition never dies, with people going every which way but under. One little girl getting the fright of her life after mum just managed to save her. But who really believes in all this gobbledygook? After all, it's just another day, isn't it?
3 o'clock on Sunday. The Tavern's the ideal place to head.
Of the 90,000 babies born in Australia every year, 6% are premature. With some weighing in under 1 kilogram, their features are tiny, and that makes the job of dressing up a little harder. Even finding clothes smaller than 4 O's can be near impossible.
Because you really haven't got time to make anything, and you can't buy little clothes like this anywhere else.
Born 13 weeks premature, young Bernadette is modelling clothes by designer Alison Martin. Her mum Jenny is one of hundreds praising the efforts of the 55-year-old sewer, described as a wardrobe godsend for premature bubs.
I've got quite a few sizes there, because the first ones I started that were my small sizes, and the mums came and said, have you got anything smaller? And we made 2 sizes smaller then for them for out here in hospital.
From selling her tiny outfits, Alison has raised thousands of dollars for Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital's neonatal intensive care ward. And as a special thank you, its new library has been named in her honour.
Dolls' clothes with a difference. It's something that we needed. We didn't know there were this many babies when I started.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
The Greens' upper house candidates took their campaign right to the gates of the Boral-owned Sawmillers exporters. Newcastle's Lisa Dobby, along with Ian Cohen and Josephine Faith, joined growing calls for the resignation of Resources Minister David Beddle over the woodchip licence issue. But they say support for logging of forest areas like the Barrington is not confined to the Commonwealth.
Industries like Boral here buying up the leases, pushing the small sawmillers out that's moving into the old growth forest and selling the wood chips off at bargain basement prices to overseas interests.
The tour then turned its focus to sand mining, again citing Boral's operations. They say this mine at Williamtown has not been licensed since 1986.
We've got such a beautiful area and so many issues facing it that the community is really speaking up about what it wants.
Ian Cohen narrowly missed gaining a seat in the 1990 elections, edged out by Fred Nile. He says voters are now looking for an alternative to the major parties.
So it's a community-based movement that's going to take on the major political parties, and we are poised with the pending balance of power to have quite an impact this time round.
Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
It was Newcastle's first game against the touring Indians, who had one first-class cricketer amongst their ranks, opening batsman Rajesh Sanghi. He thwarted the Newcastle attack early, playing shots all round the ground, but did have his share of luck. The visitors brought up their 50 from 15 overs before Sanghi was caught behind for 30. The Indians lost another quick wicket, bringing a halt to the scoring, although they did scramble well between the wickets, compiling a competitive total of 216. Meantime, Hamilton Wickham has defeated defending title holders Thornton in the annual Wallsend 15-over competition. Thornton, which defeated Lambton to qualify for the final, was dismissed for 64, Hamilton Wickham scoring the runs in 8 overs for the loss of just 2 wickets. Ian Rogers was named player of the final, while Andrew Way was the highest scorer for the day with 81. In its first year, 60 juniors enrolled for the week-long camp at the Port Stephens Soccer Academy. Providing the inspiration was Marshall Soper, a veteran of 48 internationals for Australia and a local who went all the way.
I played all my junior football here, and it's quite a good thing to come back and be a part of a coaching clinic of this magnitude, and it's great to see such a big roll-up today.
Soper is now based with Marconi in the NSL and believes it's vital for juniors like the Port Stephens Academy that the Newcastle Breakers re-enter the competition next season. He's adamant that will happen and feels just as strongly about the revelations in the Stewart report. Reluctant to talk on the issue, he says the allegations should be addressed quickly for the good of Australian soccer.
It can be disturbing for the players, and it's difficult for the Olyroos playing right now and trying to qualify to have these sort of things floating around. It's very difficult to have your mind on the job. As a player, I think, if you don't believe in the people around you, it's very difficult to believe in football itself.
At 16, Richard Johnson left Western to trial with one of the world's most famous football clubs, Tottenham Hotspur. After 3 months with Spurs, he was released and picked up by rival club Watford. Given those circumstances, this recent goal against Tottenham was of special significance. It's one of 3 goals the midfielder has scored this season, with Watford 8th in the First Division and still in contention for promotion to the Premier League. The 21-year-old says he's very much at home at Watford and would even contemplate playing for England.
I think if Australia asked me first, I'd play for them, but I have got dual citizenship, so I could play for England as well.
The former Western boy wouldn't be out of place in an England strip if his accent is anything to go by, something he's been constantly reminded of during his brief trip. Johnson still has a year to run on his contract at Watford and is hopeful of being part of the club's promotion into the Premier Division. Terrigal's Veronica Lee once again took all before her in 1994. Lee took out the Australian beach sprint titles, leading to her selection in the national team for the World Championships in England, where she won the interclub beach sprint. Her outstanding achievements were not lost on fellow Central Coaster and former NBN commentator Daryl Eastlake. Another Central Coast resident, David Fairley, joined Rugby League's elite last year, winning the Rothmans medal. He was a driving force behind North's premiership bid and was rewarded with selection in the Australian side to play France. He later toured Britain and France with the Kangaroos. The Far North Coast's Chris Feidler is one of 3 swimmers amongst this year's finalists. A previous winner of the Sports Star Award, Feidler finished second in the 100 metres freestyle at the Commonwealth Games in Canada. He later won gold in the 4x100 metres relay and teamed with Stephen Dewick to take out another gold in the medley relay.
It's time for the weekly milking at the Australian Reptile Park, and there's not a cow in sight. It's not as safe as the early morning tradition of dairy farms either. If any of this milk gets into your system, it could kill you. That makes it one of Australia's riskier jobs and a very important one.
The Australian Reptile Park is the sole supplier of funnel web venom to the Commonwealth Serum Laboratories, and when there are a lot of male funnel webs around and there are a lot of bites taking place, a lot of anti-venom is used.
Recent rain has ensured a steady flow of new donors, with up to 5 funnel webs brought to the park daily. It's all just part of a day's work for Lynn Abra, who's been extracting the venom for a quarter of a century with just one close call.
I had one walk across my hand once, but...
What was that like?
Well, it was mind-boggling. I had to keep calm. It's an ongoing thing. It's almost like a lifetime interest because they're fascinating creatures.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Petrea Thomas is one of 3 swimmers amongst the 14 finalists and began the year with a strong performance in the national championships. She continued to impress during Grand Prix meets in Europe in the build-up to Victoria, Canada. At the Commonwealth Games, she won gold in the 100 metres butterfly in record time and was part of the victorious 4x100 metre medley relay team. Such performances saw her named the AIS Female Swimmer of the Year. Like Petrea, Lake Macquarie's Natalie Ward is another aspiring to next year's Atlanta Olympics. She won the batting award at the Softball National Championships and was part of Australia's bronze medal performance at the World Series in Canada. During '94, Natalie was named in the World All-Star team and chosen as the New South Wales Softballer of the Year. The 14 finalists representing 11 sports will assemble in NBN studios tomorrow night for the announcement of the Sports Star of the Year. The successful sportsperson will receive an overseas trip from Ansett and $2,500 from the St George Bank. The announcement will be televised on NBN at 8:30.
The future for all sport is in youth, and there's no lack of skill in these young surfers. Today they were told about a bold competition only for schoolboy and girl surfers.
It'll be unreal, the spectators and the judges and stuff.
BHP has announced the Scholastic Challenge, a competition within Surfest with the best board riders from Newcastle Region schools surfing for prize money and a computer for their school.
We're putting in $10,000 to help that along its way.
BHP was Surfest's main sponsor until 1991 when the company pulled out, leaving the competition fighting for survival. The big Australian has no interest in becoming a major sponsor this year, but it is calling on other companies to support the competition. Surfest begins on March 18. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The Knights play Manly as part of the opening doubleheader of the Challenge Cup at Marathon Stadium on Friday, February the 10th. With a crowd of 20,000 likely for the two matches, the Hunter Eagles baseball team then have to set up Marathon for their final 4 home matches against the Canberra Bushrangers on Saturday. The round-the-clock task will be a joint effort between the Knights and the Eagles, as the ground must be ready for batting practice at 2 p.m. Temporary playing mounds will be installed. The Eagles' biggest concern, the state of the ground after 2 games of football. Meantime, jockey Robert Thompson's interest will turn to harness racing tomorrow night with the running of the Intercity Pace final at Maitland. Scots Blue and Smooth Ollie, trained by Peter Nelson and part owned by the Cessnock-based Thompson, will start favourites for the 34th running of the event ahead of Forest Lobel. Also enjoying favouritism this weekend, Americans Brett Kading and Leland McSpadden, who are expected to dominate this Sunday's King of Wings Classic at the Newcastle Motordrome. Among the Aussie challengers, Gary Rush, current World Series winner Brooke Tatnell and Robert Farr.
After 48 hours, the rain is still a pleasant change. The reappearance of umbrellas and raincoats a welcome sight. One of the few downsides has been the need for extra care on the roads, the conditions bringing some motorists unstuck. The Hunter hasn't experienced a deluge, with Merriwa reporting the highest reading with 26 millimetres of rain to 9 this morning. As a result, a mission to help drought-affected farmers at Scone will go ahead this weekend. Council water tankers came out of the rain today for servicing, ready to join tomorrow's relief convoy west.
It's raining and that's terrific. Unfortunately, they still haven't had enough rain up there to fill the dams up. This will seal it and we'll bring the water in and fill them.
15 tankers from 8 Hunter region councils will help top up Scone's farm water reserves. With the outlook for more rain, their job may be completed earlier than they expected.
It's a sight and sound farmers have been praying for. The parched northwest awash with rainwater. Only days ago, this area was little more than a dust bowl. Heavy rain has turned it to mud. But for one family in Balatta, 50 kilometres north of Narrabri, their rejoicing was short-lived. Thigh-high water flooded their home, and to make matters worse, they had let their insurance policy lapse.
Been a bit tight, no work, sort of thing around the area. Like everyone's in the same boat with the drought.
Mr Bell blames the Roads and Traffic Authority for building up the road next to his home. He claims if the RTA had listened to his pleas, the flooding would have been less severe.
I spoke to one of the engineers and suggested that it'd be better with more culverts in, but they told me that no, that due to all the new water tables and everything, that the water didn't flow down this creek over the back here anymore, and we'd have no worries with water.
Meanwhile, the floodwaters have also cut the main rail line between Narrabri and Moree, the water literally washing away the track's foundations. With rail services disrupted, passengers are advised to contact CountryLink before travelling. A minor flood warning has been issued for the Namoy River at Weewaw and downstream. Some roads also remain closed in the Narrabri, Gunnedah and Corindai districts. Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
A capacity crowd gathered at the Doyleson RSL to see Mirovic in the Blue Trunks contest his 8th professional fight with Matthew Reid. Both gained the upper hand at various stages, one judge scoring the fight as a draw, two deciding in favour of Mirovic. The Central Coast combination of Waters and Mirovic now want a shot at the national title, left vacant by Jimmy Thunder. Meantime, divers from across the state and Victoria were competing in day one of the country championships at Lambton Pool. The titles are a qualifying event for the national championships, which will be held at Sydney's Olympic venue for the first time in August. The Lake Macquarie Amateur International Week started today with the foursomes tournament at Belmont. Halfway through the 36-hole event, the Scottish pair of Hugh McGibbon and Stephen Gallagher were one shot clear of Brian and Trent Berry after combining for a 73 this morning. Having won the first doubleheader, the Reds began the night well, consistently getting men round the bases to take a lead that was never threatened. They won the first encounter 12-1, but had a closer match in Game 4. The Eagles fighting back, surrendering the game 10-8. Tahanas Racing and the Tui's intercity pace at Maitland was decided by a photo finish. Yap Yap Yowie appeared to have the race won, but galloped in the straight, costing it a possible victory. Michael Augustine, returning 24.70 for the win and driven by Peter Wellington, got the verdict ahead of Scots Blue and Yap Yap Yowie. Meantime, Newcastle's Graham Morris has taken out the 600 Supersport title at Eastern Creek's Triple Challenge this afternoon. Making his debut on his new Honda, Morris finished ahead of Warwick Nowland and Wyong's Damon Buckmaster, who continues to impress. The best performed sportsmen and women from across northern New South Wales gathered in NBN studios last night for the 16th presentation of the Sports Star Award. The standard of entrance was once again exceptional, with 5 world champions and 5 Commonwealth Games gold medalists in contention. But one athlete's performance stood out. Her rapid rise in the pool over the last 2 years, ending in gold in Victoria, Canada. Her achievements recognised again last night. After 2 golds and a 100-metre butterfly games record in Canada, like many of last night's finalists, Thomas is targeting further success in the Atlanta Olympics next year. The $2,500 from St George and Trip from Ansett assisting in that task. $130 surfers contested 7 divisions for the 3-day classic, which finished in a powerful 1.5-metre swell at Soldiers Beach this afternoon. After winning the Matara Classic last year, 20-year-old Nelson was one of the favourites for the Open event, especially after the first-round elimination of defending champion Darren Stapleton. Nelson qualified for the 4-man final along with Nelson Bay's Chris Hassan, Luke Fartz and Cameron Sharp. Catherine Hill-Bay's Christian McCall missed the decider after being knocked out in the semi-final on a countback. The final was a close affair, Hassan and Nelson impressing the judges with their best 4 waves, Nelson getting the decision. It caps an impressive rise for the young surfer, who will now tackle the professional circuit. Further south, and rough seas forced the Mingara Surf Club's challenge to be moved from Shelley Beach to Tawoon Bay. In its second year, all but one of the Central Coast clubs took part in the event, designed to team surf lifesavers of all ages. Avoca emerged victorious, ahead of defending title holders Wambrel, with North Entrance third.
Looking like a giant flying whale, the US Air Force's C-5 Galaxy cruised into Australian airspace. The plane is the second largest in the world, behind the Russian Antonov. While the pilots say it handles brilliantly in the sky, on the ground it's a different story.
It's a real good bird. It's forgiving. We got 28 tires that taxis it around on the ground. The hardest part about flying this bird is actually flying it around on the ground and making sure you're not hitting something with the wingtips.
Those wingtips measure 68 metres across, but it's inside where the plane really gets big. There is room in here for 6 tourist buses or 100 combi vans. The Galaxy has a maximum lift load of 380 tonnes. Its payload today was a RAF FA-18 fighter minus its wings and horizontal tail fins. The jet underwent $1 million worth of repairs after an in-flight fire last year during an operation from its home base at Tyndall in the Northern Territory.
We found we couldn't repair the damage in Australia. We didn't have the capabilities, we didn't have the jig, and the only place in the world that could repair the aircraft was a depot in the US Navy in San Diego.
The RAF is running a special investigation into why the Hornet has this potential fire risk. The jet fighter will undergo further repairs in Williamtown before flying back to Tyndall. The cost of the special nursery flight from the US is yet to be finalised. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Mr Carr was quick to tell the mine workers just what they wanted to hear. He pledged a Labor government would keep the mines open as an industry vital to the state's economy. And he said there'd still be room for expansion, even with Labor's stringent environment protection policies. The opposition leader reaffirmed Labor's key mining policies, promising to set up a coal industry consultative council to achieve higher safety standards, to retain the joint coal board and to seek private sector funding for a new rail link to the Namoy Valley coalfields at Gunnedah. Mr Carr's overtures to the mine workers are part of a long-running strategy to rebuild ALP support here. The party regained Cessnock in 1991 after a shock loss in the previous election. Mr Carr conceding today it can no longer be considered a safe Labor seat.
I know we don't take any part of the state for granted. I mean, we made our big gains in the last state election, and we've done very well in by-elections because we've gone out old-fashioned, grassroots, back to the people campaigning.
A pledge to boost the public health system and a tough new law and order policy were parts of the Labor campaign to win approval. Mr Carr emerging from the meeting confident of the mine workers' support as the March 25 poll approaches. Ian Cameron, NBN News.
Around 1,000 residents gathered to celebrate Australia Day. From 8 o'clock this morning, the crowd was entertained by music from the Wingham Services Club Band. Children displayed their patriotic spirit, and Taree Air Cadets took part in a flag-raising ceremony before the award presentation. Mayor Ralph Metcalfe welcomed the crowd and Australia Day Ambassador, Commonwealth Games gymnast Lee Marning. The Greater Taree City Sports Award was presented to 12-year-old Trenton Spriggs for his dedication to sports for the disabled. He broke age records at the State Disabled Swimming Championships. 17-year-old Asia Allison from Wingham High was the recipient of the Young Citizen of the Year award. She has excelled academically and in the fields of drama and public speaking. The Citizen of the Year award went to Doreen Raywood. A gymnastics coach, she organised the staging of the first Australian Gym Fest in Taree last year and is taking a group of local competitors to the World Gymnastrada in Berlin later this year.
Unexpected and very emotional. I do what I like doing because it makes me feel good first, and I think working with children particularly is one of the joys of this world.